Good morning again. I'm Casey Hanna. I'm a little nervous. Not nervous standing in front of a bunch of people. I'm used to that, being an educator. But I'm nervous of telling my story. It's difficult to get up here and tell your story, but I just pray that the Lord is with me and what I say resonates in you today. So I'm first going to start by telling my story and my journey that Christ has been with me this whole time. But then, secondly, I'm going to intertwine into that. I'm going to tell you, because of the first part, it led me to the second part. And it's called servant leadership. As you may know, I was born and raised here in Pascagoula, Mississippi. I was an Arlington kid. I was born to Sam Stewart, and my father is David Reed Clemens. As a young infant, I was christened in East Lawn Methodist Church in 1975 by Reverend Nick Nicholson. Some of you may remember him. But when I was 5, my parents divorced. A lot of turmoil in the house, and it was a good decision that needed to be made. And so then my mom is now raising 3 kids on a teacher's salary, which is not much. And she would work odd jobs here and there to be able to just kind of make ends meet. So I learned that if you wanted it done, you had to do it yourself. Cleaning the house, cooking a meal, doing those types of things, because she was working a lot, so it was just go. You can go get this done. You can do this. So at a very early age, I learned how to do a lot on my own. But during all of that, I always had a strive to attend church. Because I was an Arlington kid, I lived on Farrell Street, and Arlington Baptist Church was around the corner. And so Mom would sometimes be tired on Sunday, so I went to church on my own. I would walk. I had a next door neighbor. She and I would go together sometimes, and we walked from the house to Arlington Baptist Church, and I went every Sunday. Something kept telling me, go, go, go. I loved it. I loved learning. I loved being a part of something, and every vacation Bible school that they had, anything that they had, Christmas programs. I was even baptized. So I've been christened, I've been dunked, I've been sprinkled, I've had it all. And so at 12, I lost my father, my biological father. I lost him tragically. I don't know if y'all know that. And though he wasn't a constant in my life, he was still my father. And to lose him at 12 was very difficult. No child should have to go through losing a parent at a very early age. But at 13, my mom married David right here in this church. And boy, oh boy, did my life change. If you know David Stewart, you know that it changed considerably. So they just had their 37 anniversary on March 1st. So congratulations that he has lived with us for 37 years, and he's still alive. And so I want to say happy birthday or happy anniversary to them. But one, I don't think David knew what he was getting into when he married my mom with 3 kids. I don't know what I was getting into when she married David. But I certainly did not know at the time what the Lord had planned for me from this marriage. So I going 8 years without a father figure in the house, and then I'm now a teenager, and he's going to tell me what I can and cannot do. If you've had teenagers, you know. And then all of a sudden you have now a father figure in there. And so I'll have to tell you the story about the house telephone situation later. But it was interesting. It was back before cell phones, and but you remember the long cords and everything from that time. It's a funny one. But that's when I joined First United Methodist Church here in Pascagoula. I started with confirmation classes. I had Sunday school classes and then joined the youth group. And so from the age of 13 to 18, best times of my life, right up there in that very room. I had a brick with my name on it. Being in this gym reminds me of all the fun times that we had. Camp Leslie Pines, attending those. Camp Lake Stevens. Trail camp. Some of you may have been here during that time when Brent Waltrip took us on the Appalachian Trail. We did 36 miles on the Appalachian Trail. It rained twice, once for 4 days and the next for 5. So it rained the entire time. We slept under tarps. It was interesting, but it was a moment that, being away from everything, that I became very, very close with God during that time. I did Lake Junaluska. I was actually on the youth council for the Seashore District when I was in high school. I did mission trips to Jamaica and Estonia. So back then, between 88 and 93, I had no idea the plans that God had for me, but I followed. I just followed. I didn't know why. Maybe he made it interesting for me. Maybe he opened up those opportunities, and in my simple brain just didn't see it at the time. But all of this that I've been talking about would not be possible without servant leadership or servant leaders, and especially in this church. Servant leaders, people in this very church that love, guided, supported me along the way. They invested in me. I'm going to just name a few. Reverend Cates, Reverend Earl Greeno, obviously Sam and David Stewart, Russ and Alice Walker, my Sunday school teacher, Carlana Lang. I so remember I was the only girl in a group of boys during that Sunday school class time. I was it, and so I had to put up with all their stuff. Brent Waltrip, Johnny and Bobby Walton, Sandra Grissom, Francis and Elizabeth Harala, which is now Elizabeth Newcomb. Johnny Walton, I'll tell you, he taught me how to measure a board and, pop that string to be able to measure, and then that's where you cut. I didn't know how to do that. We were in Jamaica and taught me how to do that, so I learned some carpentry skills from Johnny Walton. Francis Harala, he taught me how to laugh in serious situations, especially when we were in Estonia, and I will never forget that. Russ Walker taught me that when all else fails on a youth trip, you can always find a hotel and a laundromat to wash and dry your clothes. So on this trip, when it rained so much, he was like, "I'm done. Here's my card. We're getting a hotel." But these are several servant leaders that have always been a part of my life and made who I am today. So Eddie's been doing a sermon series on preaching about remembering your baptism. But I would like for you to reflect on when others are baptized. When you were baptized or confirmed in the church, there's a covenant that we take to love, support, and invest in our children. It is said, members of the household of God, I command you, these persons, to love and care. Do all in your power to increase their faith, confirm their hopes, and perfect them in love. And then as a congregation, we say back, we give thanks for all that God has already given you, and we welcome you in Christian love. As members together with you in the body of Christ and in this congregation of the United Methodist Church, we renew our covenant faithfully to participate in the ministries of the church by our prayers, our presence, our gifts, our service, our witness, that in everything God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. In Matthew 20 through 28, and I have to say this, I have to read the whole section because there's a young gentleman by the name of Jack back there that reminds us to make sure that we look at the whole picture. So in the Bible, Matthew 20 through 28, Jesus is teaching us about serving others. When the mother of James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus with her sons, she knelt respectfully to ask a favor. What is your request? He asked. She replied, in your kingdom, please let my 2 sons sit in places of honor next to you, one on the right and one on the left. But Jesus answered by saying to them, you don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink from the bitter cup of suffering I am about to drink? Oh, yes, they replied, we are able. Jesus told them, when you indeed drink from my bitter cup, but I have no right to say who will sit at my right or my left. My Father has prepared those places for the ones he has chosen. When the 10 other disciples heard that James and John had asked, they were indignant. But Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers in this world lord and it over their people, and officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you, you will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So, one of the last days before Jesus is entering into Jerusalem and before his crucifixion, Jesus in this passage teaches us about serving others. James and John and their mother failed to grasp the previous teachings that he had done on reward and eternal life. They failed to understand the suffering that they must face before living in the glory of God's kingdom. That there is no hierarchy for serving. Jesus was showing that he was under the authority of the Father, who alone makes the decisions about leadership in heaven. The other disciples were upset with James and John for trying to grab top positions. We all sometimes feel that we are grabbing for the top positions, just like all the disciples wanted to be the greatest. But Jesus taught them that the greatest person in God's kingdom is the servant of all. Authority is not given, not for self-importance, for ambition or respect, but for useful service to God and his creations. Jesus describes leadership from a new perspective. Instead of using people, we are to serve them, the big ones, and especially the little ones. Jesus' mission was to serve others and to give his life away, which is the crucifixion. A real leader has a servant heart. Humility. Servant leaders appreciate others' worth and realize that they are not above any job. If you see something that needs to be done, don't wait to be asked. Take the initiative and do it like a faithful servant. We are not above cleaning for others. We are not above teaching others. We are not above serving those in our own church to remember our covenant and to help our own in this church. So how do you do that? Oh, I'm going to let you know. All right, so first I like to do definitions. Being an educator, I like to define things. So a servant is a person who performs duties for others. A leader is a person who leads or commands a group. But if you look at servant leader, it's a person who strives to serve others, to invest in a person's development and well-being for the benefit of the common good. And I think we know what our common good is here. So thinking about all of the names of people I listed earlier, whose life have you invested in? Whose life can you continue to invest in? And how can I invest in someone's life? So I may have an answer for you, I hope. I say all of this to continue to tell you about my journey. After college, I became a teacher in 1999. I taught for 9 years. I became an administrator in 2010. I've been doing that now for 13 years as an administrator. I became a mother of 2 precious children, Hattie in 2008 and War David in 2011. When I was in Arkansas, I was on the children's ministry team at the United Methodist Church in Cabot, Arkansas. In 2019, I moved back home. A very tough decision, but God was with me the entire time. Sometimes things don't go the way that we want them or expect them to go. But then I always think about the poem, Footprints in the Sand, by Mary Stevenson. One night I dreamed a dream as I was walking along the beach with my Lord. Across the dark sky flashed scenes from my life. For each scene, I noticed 2 sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to me and one to my Lord. After the last scene of my life flashed before me, I looked back at the footprints in the sand. I noticed that at many times along my path in my life, especially at the lowest and saddest times, there was only one set of footprints. This really troubled me, so I asked the Lord about it. Lord, you have said once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I noticed that during the saddest and most troublesome times of my life, there was only one set of footprints. I don't understand why, when I needed you the most, you would leave me. And the Lord replied, my precious child, I love you and I will never leave you. Never ever during your trials and sufferings, when you saw only one set of footprints, it was then I carried you. The Lord carried me back home. He carried me here. And He has a purpose for me here. And I have found it, a servant leader's purpose. So presently, I am now the principal at Lake Elementary. Absolutely love it. Don't move me, I'm good. And recently, the newly hired children's director here at First United Methodist Church. And God's purpose for me has been servant leadership. But it does not take all of my journey to be a servant leader. If you believe in the covenant, the promise that you speak as a church, as a congregation, you too are a servant leader. We have so many precious children and youth in this church, and they need your servant leadership. By your prayers, by your presence, by your gifts, by your service, and by your witness. And in the end, you will be rewarded, just as I am every single day of my life, with blessings of knowing that through the covenant, I invested in the life of the church through growing these children spiritually in the life of the church. So let me count the ways that you can do that. And I'm going to be specific on these things. Volunteer in the office to make copies for the children's clipboards and place the copies on the clipboards before each Sunday. I'll teach you how to use that copy machine. It can be a little difficult, but I can show you how to do it. Purchase Smarties. That is my go-to thing. Purchase Smarties. You know, the children expect those Smarties on those clipboards every Sunday. It's just something that we do. Unless, y'all know that. They got to have those Smarties. Teach a Sunday school class. We have 2 groups, just once a month. It's right after this service. I get all the materials ready for you. But we have 2 groups. We have the young, the 4-year-olds to 3rd grade. And then we have the 4th grade through 6th grade. I promise you during that time they will bless you more than you can bless them. Teacher volunteer on a Wednesday night alive. Again, we separate the 2 groups, the young 4-year-olds and then the other group from 5:45 to 6:45. 15 minutes of that is taking them outside to the playground and let them run off some steam. So you only have 45 minutes of a lesson. Again, I prepare the lessons for you. But sometimes just being an extra, volunteering and being an extra, I can do the lesson, but having an extra pair of hands is always helpful. So if you have some time on Wednesdays, if you want to do once a month, that would be great. Volunteer for the Easter egg hunt. Back there on that whiteboard, I've got the volunteer sheets. You can run a game. And basically, you're just passing out candy. Monitoring a bouncy house. That's always fun. Donating Easter eggs. Just helping to set up and clean up. Maybe children aren't your thing. And I understand that. It's not for everybody, but helping to set up and clean up, that's an adult thing. And that's something that you can certainly help with. Helping me when it's time to organize the eggs. I've got to do the buckets, and I've got to have the buckets for each age group for them to then, the youth, put the eggs out for the hunt, and just being able to organize those by age to make sure that we've got enough for each age group. Vacation Bible School's coming up. I need crew leaders. You don't teach a lesson. Crew leaders, you're walking students from one activity to the next activity. I'm telling you, the more adults that I have, the easier it is. Kitchen workers during Vacation Bible School. Decorations, tons of decorations. We'll have work night before VBS to be able to set everything up. Clean up and set up. Office work. Again, if this is your thing, making copies of the activity sheets for VBS, the brochures that'll be going out, organizing the name tags. Those are certainly. But also, if you want to be a director or a co-director for VBS, I would like to start having a second person with us, because it is the biggest event that we have at this church. And that is our way to get more members here in this church so that we can grow these young children spiritually. Volunteer to be an extra adult, as I said, not only with the children's ministry, but also with the youth. And here's another one, the last one. Buy treats, buy snacks, waters. The kids, when we do our 15 minutes outside, they come in and they are just parched. And so having that water available for them. So there's several different things for you to be able to get involved and ways to become a servant leader in this church. And I guarantee you, you're going to be richly rewarded for doing it. So as the band comes up, I'm just going to say this last thing. The children in this church are our most precious gifts. During my time and growing up here, I was a precious gift that those people that I named and many, many more invested in me and what I was doing, and took the time to teach or guide or volunteer or whatever, but it wouldn't have happened without those people. Look how I turned out. I think, okay. Become a part of their lives and grow them to be our future servant leaders. Thank you.